Many years had passed since the time of Joseph, the son of Jacob, who had once saved Egypt from famine. He and his family had settled in the land of Goshen, and there, the people of Israel had grown. They became strong and many, a great multitude filling the land. But in time, a new Pharaoh rose to power, one who did not remember Joseph, nor the kindness he had shown to Egypt. Pharaoh looked upon the people of Israel and saw not neighbors, but a threat. "They are too many," he said to his advisers. "If war comes, they may turn against us." And so he gave a cruel command. The Hebrews were to be made slaves. The sound of hammers and whips echoed across the land. From the rising of the sun to its setting, the Israelites labored under the weight of heavy bricks and endless burdens. They built Pharaoh's cities Pithom and Ramses, baking in the sun, drenched in sweat, their hands calloused with suffering. Yet even in chains, the people multiplied. The more they were pressed, the more they grew. Pharaoh's heart darkened further. He summoned his guards. "Take every Hebrew baby boy," he ordered, "and cast him into the Nile." It was a law of fear, a law of death, and it swept across the land like a shadow. Mothers wept in silence. Fathers held their children close, hiding them from the eyes of soldiers. The Nile, once a source of life, had become a river of sorrow. But in heaven, God heard. He saw every tear, every cry, every aching soul. The time of sorrow would not last forever. A deliverer was coming. In a small, humble home in the land of Goshen, a Hebrew woman named Jochebed gave birth to a son. He was strong, his cry was fierce, and in his eyes was a spark of something greater, something set apart. But the law of Pharaoh was still in the land. Every Hebrew boy must be thrown into the Nile. Jochebed's heart ached, yet she would not surrender her child to fear. For 3 months, she hid him, rocking him gently in the quiet hours, keeping watch through the night, her husband Amram always near. But as the baby grew, so did the danger. His cries grew louder, his presence harder to hide. And so, with trembling hands and a heart full of both sorrow and hope, Jochebed did something unthinkable. She took a basket made of reeds and coated it with pitch to keep it dry. She wrapped her baby tightly in cloth, kissed his forehead, and placed him gently inside. Then she set the basket in the waters of the Nile and let it float among the reeds. His sister, Miriam, watched from a distance, her eyes wide and watchful. Would someone find him? Would God protect him? Down the river came Pharaoh's daughter, a princess of Egypt, walking with her servants by the water's edge. She heard a soft cry and turned her head. There, nestled among the reeds, was the basket. She opened it, the baby wept, and her heart was moved. "This must be one of the Hebrews' children," she said softly. Miriam stepped out from where she was hiding. Her voice was brave. "Shall I find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter nodded, and Miriam ran to fetch her mother, Moses' own mother. And so, by the grace of God, the baby returned to the arms that had first held him. Jochebed would nurse her own son, not in secret, but under the protection of the palace. When the child grew older, he was brought back to the princess, and she named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." And so the river that once carried sorrow had now carried salvation. The boy who should have died now lived in the palace of the king. God was at work. A deliverer was growing. In the heart of Egypt, behind golden gates and walls carved with the stories of gods and kings, a Hebrew child walked among princes. Moses, though born of slaves, was now the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter, wrapped in silk, trained by scholars, and guarded by charioteers. To the world, he was Egyptian royalty, but in his heart, he carried a name that echoed freedom. He grew swiftly under the warm eye of the court. The boy was curious, quick to learn, and bold. Pharaoh's scribes taught him hieroglyphs and scrolls, languages of empires, codes of laws, mathematics that mapped the stars. He sat among the wisest men of Egypt, and they marveled at his questions. But it wasn't just books and scrolls. Moses was trained in the arts of war. His arms learned the bow, the sword, and the chariot reins. In time, he ran with generals and sparred with the sons of warriors. He became strong, precise, and fearless. And yet, something stirred within him. Whenever he passed the outer quarters, where the slaves toiled beneath the weight of stone and heat, his gaze lingered. He didn't know why yet, but something in their suffering felt personal. In the temple halls, He watched Egyptians bow before statues of jackals and falcons. But late at night, he'd sit by his window and stare at the stars, whispering to a god he did not yet know. He was not like the others, he belonged. And yet, he didn't. The palace called him prince, but his spirit told him he was meant for something far beyond gold and stone. A storm was growing inside him, and soon, it would break. Moses had grown into a man of strength and wisdom, a prince among princes, honored in Pharaoh's court, feared and admired in equal measure. His chariot cut through the streets like lightning. His voice commanded soldiers, his word held weight. But within him, the question still burned. Who am I? One day, that question became unbearable. He had passed by the labor pits before, but never like this. On this day, the sun was cruel, and the air thick with dust. Hebrew slaves groaned under the lash, their backs striped with pain. And then he saw it. An Egyptian overseer, shouting, beating a Hebrew man with violent rage. Moses froze, then his hands clenched, his blood boiled. He stepped forward, each breath sharper than the last. No one saw what happened clearly. Just a flash of movement, a cry, and silence. The Egyptian lay dead in the sand. Moses looked around. The desert wind swept over the body. He buried it quickly, hands trembling, heart pounding. He thought it was justice. He thought it would pass, but truth has a way of rising. The next day, he returned and saw two Hebrews fighting. He stepped between them. "Why are you striking your brother?" he asked, but the man turned sharply. "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" The words hit like thunder. It was no longer a secret. Pharaoh heard, and Pharaoh was furious. Now, the same halls that raised Moses echoed with whispers and orders. His name, once spoken with pride, was now venom. So Moses ran. He fled the only life he had ever known, past the cities, past the Nile, into the wilderness where the sun was unkind and the nights even colder. Each step took him farther from the palace, and closer to the plan of God. He didn't know it yet, but the desert was not his end. It was only the beginning. After fleeing Egypt, Moses journeyed far into the wilderness. The heat of the desert was harsh, and the road long, but Moses walked on, carrying only the clothes on his back and memories that weighed heavily on his heart. At last, he arrived in a quiet land called Midian, a land of shepherds and open hills. Weary and thirsty, he sat down beside a well. There, he saw a group of sisters struggling to water their flock. Other shepherds were pushing them aside. But Moses, though a stranger, stood and defended the women. With kindness and strength, he helped them draw water for their sheep. The sisters hurried home and told their father, Jethro, the priest of Midian, about the kind man who helped them. Jethro welcomed Moses into his home, and in time, gave him his daughter Zipporah in marriage. Moses lived with them peacefully and became a shepherd himself, tending flocks in the quiet hills of Midian. He found solace in the simple life, though he never forgot his people in Egypt. Years passed. One day, while leading his sheep near Mount Horeb, something strange caught his eye. A bush, engulfed in flames but not burning up. Curious, Moses stepped closer. Then, from the fire, a voice called his name. "Moses, Moses," he froze. "Here I am," he answered. "Do not come any closer," the voice said. "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." Moses trembled and removed his sandals. His heart pounded. "I am the God of your father," the voice said, "the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses covered his face, afraid to look. Then the Lord said, "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. I have come to rescue them, and I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out." Moses was stunned. "Who am I to go to Pharaoh? How can I do this?" And God said, "I will be with you." Still, Moses asked, "When they ask me who sent me, what shall I say?" The voice replied, "Tell them I am who I am. Say, I am has sent me to you." Moses listened, overwhelmed. As God gave him signs, his staff would turn into a serpent, and his hand would show signs of power. Even so, Moses hesitated. "But I am not a good speaker." Then the Lord grew firm but patient. "I made your mouth. I will help you speak. But if you wish, your brother Aaron will go with you. He will speak for you." So Moses accepted the call. With staff in hand and fire in his heart, he returned home. He kissed Zipporah and gathered his things. The time had come to leave Midian. God had spoken. The journey of freedom was about to begin. With his staff in hand and the voice of God in his heart, Moses left the quiet hills of Midian. Beside him walked his wife, Zipporah, and their young son, riding on a donkey. The path back to Egypt was not easy. Moses was going back to the land he once fled, a land ruled by a new Pharaoh, even more proudful than the last. As they journeyed through the wilderness, God spoke again. When you return to Egypt, perform the signs I have given you before Pharaoh. But I will harden his heart, so he will not let the people go. Not at first. Moses bowed his head. He didn't fully understand, but he trusted the Lord. Along the way, Aaron, Moses' brother, met him on the road. The two embraced, tears in their eyes. It had been many years since they'd seen each other, but their hearts remembered. I have been sent by the Lord, Moses told Aaron, and you will speak for me. Together, they entered Egypt. Moses and Aaron went before the elders of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words the Lord had spoken to Moses, and Moses performed the signs. His staff turned into a serpent and back again, his hand changed and was healed. The people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had seen their suffering, they bowed down and worshipped. With courage rising, Moses and Aaron entered Pharaoh's great palace. The throne hall was grand, lined with columns of gold and guarded by soldiers. Pharaoh sat upon his high seat, wrapped in linen and pride. Aaron stepped forward. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness. Pharaoh laughed. Who is the Lord, that I should obey him? I do not know this God, and I will not let Israel go. Moses and Aaron pleaded again, but Pharaoh's face grew hard. You want rest, then I will give your people more work. That very day, Pharaoh gave the order. No more straw will be given to the Israelites to make bricks. Let them gather it themselves, but the number of bricks must not decrease. The taskmasters became harsher. The people scattered through the land, gathering stubble and straw. They groaned under the weight of cruel labor. The Israelite overseers cried out to Pharaoh, but he refused to listen. Lazy, that's what you are. Now get to work. Heartbroken, the leaders turned on Moses and Aaron. May the Lord judge you. You have made us stink in Pharaoh's eyes. Moses cried out to God, why have you brought trouble on these people? Why did you send me? But the Lord answered with strength in his voice, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let my people go. I am the Lord, and I made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have heard the groaning of my people, and I will deliver them. With renewed purpose, Moses listened. The journey of redemption was just beginning, and though Pharaoh's heart was hard, God's power was greater still. Pharaoh's heart remained as stone, though Moses and Aaron returned again and again, pleading for the release of Israel. The ruler of Egypt mocked them and refused. But the Lord had spoken, and the time for signs had come. One morning, Moses and Aaron entered Pharaoh's grand court once more. The air was tense, the king's glare cold. Aaron raised Moses' staff high and cast it before Pharaoh. At once, the staff struck the ground and turned into a living serpent, slithering with power. Pharaoh's magicians, trained in dark arts, came forward and cast their own staffs. They too became serpents, but Aaron's serpent swallowed them whole. Still, Pharaoh would not listen. Then, at God's command, Moses met Pharaoh again by the banks of the Nile River. Aaron stretched out the staff over the waters. Suddenly, the river turned to blood. Fish floated lifelessly to the surface, and the water stank. The people cried out they could not drink. The lifeblood of Egypt had become death. Pharaoh's magicians mimicked the sign, and so Pharaoh hardened his heart once more. He turned away, unmoved. 7 days passed. God sent Moses and Aaron again. Let my people go, they declared, but Pharaoh would not yield. Aaron stretched out his hand, and frogs came leaping forth, frogs from the river, the fields, the homes. They covered beds, ovens, tables, even Pharaoh's throne. In disgust, Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, pray to your God to take them away, and I will let the people go. Moses prayed, and the frogs died. But when relief came, Pharaoh hardened his heart yet again. So the Lord said, strike the dust of the earth. Aaron raised the staff, and the dust became gnats. They swarmed men and animals. The magicians tried to copy the sign but could not. This is the finger of God, they whispered. Yet Pharaoh would not listen. Next came flies. Thick and black, they filled Egyptian homes, but not a single fly entered the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived. Pharaoh begged Moses again. "Pray for me," he said. "You may go sacrifice, but do not go far." Moses prayed, and the flies vanished, but once again, Pharaoh changed his mind. Then the Lord struck the livestock of Egypt: horses, donkeys, camels, sheep, and cattle fell ill and died. But not a single animal in Goshen was harmed. Still, Pharaoh's pride held. God told Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of soot and throw them into the air. As the soot drifted over Egypt, boils broke out on man and beast alike. The pain was great, but Pharaoh stood firm. Then God sent a warning. "Tomorrow, I will rain down hail like Egypt has never seen." The next day, the sky turned dark, thunder roared. Hail fell from the sky, mixed with fire, crops were destroyed, trees shattered. Yet once again, Goshen was spared. Pharaoh cried out in fear, "I have sinned. The Lord is right, and I am wrong." Moses prayed, and the hail ceased, but Pharaoh's heart, though shaken, did not break. One by one, the Lord showed his wonders. One by one, Pharaoh refused, but the people began to notice the God of Moses was unlike any God they had ever known. The battle between a hardened king and the Almighty had begun in full, and Israel's deliverance was drawing near. Pharaoh's heart was unyielding. Egypt had witnessed blood in the Nile, frogs in the beds, flies in the halls, hail from heaven, and yet he would not let the people of Israel go. But the Lord was not finished. One morning, God said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh again. Tell him, 'Let my people go, so they may serve me.' If you refuse, I will send locusts into your land. They will cover every surface and devour what remains after the hail." Moses and Aaron entered Pharaoh's court once more, their faces bold with God's authority. "How long will you refuse to humble yourself before the Lord?" Moses asked. "Let his people go." Pharaoh's officials, weary and afraid, turned to their king. "How long will this man bring ruin upon us? Let them go before all Egypt is destroyed." But Pharaoh clung to his pride. So Moses stretched out his staff, and the wind blew, a thick eastern wind that filled the skies. When morning came, a black cloud covered the land. Locusts, thousands upon thousands, descended upon Egypt. They ate every green leaf, every blade of grass, every remaining crop. The land that had once bloomed now stood stripped and barren. In desperation, Pharaoh summoned Moses. "I have sinned," he said. "Forgive me. Pray to your God to take this plague away." Moses prayed. The Lord sent a strong west wind that carried the locusts into the sea. But as the skies cleared, so did Pharaoh's heart. Hardened again, he refused. Then the Lord spoke again. "Stretch out your hand toward the sky." So Moses lifted his hand, and a thick darkness fell over Egypt. It was not night, but a darkness so heavy, it could be felt. For 3 days, no one moved from their place. Lamps could not pierce it, children cried in fear. But in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was light. Once more, Pharaoh summoned Moses. "Go. Take your people, but leave your animals behind." Moses refused. "Not a hoof will be left. We must worship the Lord with all he gives us." Pharaoh's eyes blazed. "Get out of my sight," he shouted. "The day you see my face again, you will die." Moses stood tall. "So be it," he said. "I will not see your face again." He turned and left Pharaoh's palace, heart burning with the words God had just spoken to him. One final plague remained, the most sorrowful of all. The Lord said, "After this, Pharaoh will drive you out. Tell the people of Israel to ask the Egyptians for silver and gold, they will be given favor." Then, with a trembling heart, Moses gave the warning. "At midnight, the Lord will pass through Egypt. Every firstborn son will die, from Pharaoh's heir to the lowest servant, even the firstborn of the cattle. But not one of Israel will be harmed, so that Egypt may know the Lord makes a distinction between his people and others." And Moses, filled with God's power and grief, left Pharaoh's presence for the last time. The hour of deliverance was near, but the night would bring sorrow to Egypt's doorstep. A stillness hung over Egypt. Though the sun shone and life moved forward, a great shadow loomed. Moses had spoken the final warning, but Pharaoh's heart remained unchanged. God now spoke to Moses with solemn clarity. "This month shall be the beginning of months for you," the Lord said. "Speak to the whole assembly of Israel. On the 10th day, each family must take a lamb, a spotless, perfect lamb. Keep it until the 14th day, then slaughter it at twilight. The people listened closely. You shall take the blood of the lamb and paint it on the doorposts and lintels of your homes. That night, roast the lamb and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Dress in your travel clothes, sandals on your feet, staff in hand, eat in haste, for it is the Lord's Passover. Moses' voice trembled as he explained, that night, the Lord will pass through Egypt. He will strike down every firstborn in the land. But when he sees the blood on your door, he will pass over you, and no destruction will come to your home. The Israelites obeyed, hearts heavy with reverence and hope. That evening, the sun dipped low. Families gathered in their homes. Lambs were sacrificed. Blood marked the doors. Fires crackled with the roasting meat. Parents whispered the meaning of the moment to their children. And then midnight fell. A silence deeper than any other covered the land. Then, suddenly, cries pierced the night. From Pharaoh's palace to the poorest hut, a bitter wail rose. Every Egyptian household was touched by sorrow. In each one, the firstborn had perished. Even Pharaoh's own son, his pride and joy was gone. The angel of death had passed over Israel, but Egypt wept. Pharaoh, broken and trembling, summoned Moses and Aaron before dawn. His voice cracked with grief and fear. Go, he said, leave my people. Take your flocks, your herds, your children, go and bless me also. The Egyptians, desperate to be rid of them, urged the Israelites to hurry. They gave them silver, gold, and clothing, gifts of liberation from the very hands that had enslaved them. Before the sun rose, the Israelites began their journey. After 430 years in Egypt, the descendants of Abraham were finally free. They walked out of bondage with heads lifted and hearts burning. The Lord had kept his promise. And in the quiet, under the stars, God gave one last command. Remember this day. Year after year, celebrate the Passover, for with a mighty hand I brought you out of Egypt. Freedom had come, but the journey had only begun. The night of Egypt's sorrow became the dawn of Israel's freedom. As the stars faded and the first light of morning crept over the horizon, the people of Israel began to move, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, along with flocks, herds, and carts loaded with belongings. From the youngest babe to the oldest elder, they walked together, free for the first time in generations. Moses, at the front, lifted his staff and stepped forward. Aaron walked beside him. Cries of joy, songs of praise, and whispered prayers rose from the people. The Lord guided them not along the shortest path, but the safest one. A pillar of cloud went before them by day, and by night, a pillar of fire lit the way. God's presence was with them. But back in Egypt, Pharaoh's grief turned to rage. He gathered his finest soldiers, horses, and chariots. What have we done? He cried. We've let them go. With swords gleaming and wheels thundering, Pharaoh's army pursued. In the wilderness, the Israelites camped by the Red Sea, unaware of the danger closing in behind them. But then a rumble. A sound like thunder, just on the horizon. The Egyptians were coming. Panic surged through the people. Why did you bring us here to die, Moses? They shouted. Were there no graves in Egypt? But Moses stood firm. He raised his voice. Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord spoke, lift up your staff, Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. Then the pillar of cloud moved behind the people, standing between them and the approaching army. It became darkness to the Egyptians, but light to the Israelites. Moses lifted his staff. Suddenly, a mighty east wind blew all night long. The waters of the Red Sea parted, towering like walls on either side. The seabed dried beneath their feet. With awe in their eyes, the people of Israel walked through the sea on dry ground, an impossible path made by the hand of God. Behind them, Pharaoh's army followed, charging into the sea path. But at daybreak, God looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud. Confusion fell upon the Egyptians, their chariot wheels stuck in the mud. Chaos broke out. Then God spoke again. Moses, stretch out your hand. Moses did, and the waters came crashing down. Waves thundered over the chariots, horses, and soldiers. Not one of them survived. Silence followed, then a shout of joy. Israel stood safely on the other side of the sea. Slavery was behind them. Death had passed them by. The power of Pharaoh was drowned. Miriam, Moses' sister, took a tambourine in her hand. Other women followed her, dancing and singing, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. The people of God were free, delivered by miracles, guided by fire, and protected by the Almighty. The desert lay before them, but now, they believed, the Lord would lead them through. The Red Sea now lay behind them, calm and quiet once more. Its waves had swallowed Pharaoh's pride, and its path had delivered God's people. But before them stretched a vast, unknown land, the wilderness. The Israelites walked on, step by step, into the desert. The heat was heavy, the sun beat down. Days passed, and thirst crept into every mouth. 3 days, and no water to drink. They came to a place called Marah, but the waters were bitter and drinkable. The people grumbled, "What shall we drink?" They cried. Moses turned to God, and God answered. The Lord showed him a piece of wood. Moses threw it into the water, and the bitter water became sweet. The people drank and were refreshed. From there, they came to Elim, where palm trees swayed and 12 springs bubbled with fresh water. They rested under shade, their hope restored. But soon, hunger came. Once again, the people murmured. "If only we had died in Egypt," they said. "There we had food. Now we starve." Moses cried out to God, and the Lord answered from above. "I will rain down bread from heaven," he said. That evening, quail flew into the camp, covering the ground. The people gathered and ate meat until they were full. In the morning, a fine flaky substance covered the ground like frost. "What is it?" they asked. Moses smiled. "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat." They called it manna, and it came every morning. Each family gathered what they needed. But if they tried to store more than a day's portion, it spoiled except on the 6th day, when they were to collect double. On the 7th day, no manna came. This was how the Lord taught his people to trust him daily, and to rest in his provision. Then they came to a dry place called Rephidim. Again, no water. And again, the people quarreled with Moses. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die of thirst?" Moses cried out. "What shall I do with these people?" The Lord told him, "Take your staff, go to the rock at Horeb, strike it, and water will come out." Moses obeyed, and water gushed from the rock, enough for everyone. But trouble was not over. Suddenly, an enemy approached. The Amalekites. Warriors charged toward the camp. Moses called Joshua, a young and brave leader. "Choose men and fight them," he said. "Tomorrow, I will stand on the hilltop with the staff of God in my hands." As Joshua battled, Moses stood with arms raised to heaven. As long as his hands were lifted, Israel prevailed. When he grew tired, the enemy gained ground, so Aaron and Hur came beside him. They placed a stone for him to sit on and held up his hands one on each side. Until sunset, they stood together, and Israel won the battle. Afterward, Moses built an altar and named it Nissi, "The Lord is my banner." In the wilderness, Israel was learning. Their freedom was new. Their journey was long. But the Lord who turned water sweet, who rained bread from heaven, who made water flow from a rock, and who gave them victory was with them. They were not alone.